All right, we have to talk about this. Every pianist's worst nightmare.
Sight reading!
Okay, maybe we don't have to panic that much when it comes to sight reading. And besides, if you've got all the right tools like I'm gonna show you in this video, then sight reading is gonna be a breeze for you. So make sure you stick around to the end so you learn every single technique. I promise you, if you try these techniques, you're gonna see a huge change in how you play. By the way, it's Josh with Piano Frenzy, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss cool content just like this. It's time to hop into our first tip. Let's get right into it. So one of the most important components in sight reading is making sure that you're always looking ahead. This gives you a chance to see rhythms that are coming up, analyze things that are going to be happening soon, and of course, make sure you don't get stuck in the measure that you're in, and you'll know how you want to end the piece, not just how you start it. So here's an example of me playing the sonatina when you are looking ahead properly. So as you can hear, good flow. As you saw with the meter, everything was going across. And that's actually where my eyes were at that moment when I was reading the music. Now here's an example of what this might sound like if I'm not looking ahead. So of course that doesn't sound so good because everything is coming at me so quickly that by the time I get ready for the next note, I'm not really ready for it. And I'm not prepared because I was not looking ahead. So my advice to you, when you're first looking at music, always try to read ahead 1 or 2 measures at a time. At least glance it, look at the finger numbers, look to see if there's any huge position changes. Are there any flats or sharps, any accidentals, anything that might throw you off? And then as you play it, you'll have some relative information there. You'll kind of know, okay, I can get ready to do this, or maybe I need to get ready to do that. Versus if it's all coming at you at once and you're not really ready for it, you're probably gonna have a lot of pauses and stops, as in my second example. So as you can see, scanning ahead just a couple measures, even 1 or 2 at a time, has huge benefits. Not only does it make the music go a lot smoother, but it also stops you from that whole tunnel vision thing where you can't see anything outside of what's right in front of you. So it's a great skill to have, and it's important in any kind of music you play, not just piano. So one of the biggest issues I see with new piano students is that they stare down way too much when they're trying to sight read something. So take this sonatina for example. They're looking at the music, they're reading it one time, and then they're immediately staring down and doing this. So that sounds absolutely terrible, right? But it's entirely preventable, and all you have to do is make sure that you keep your eyes up. That way you don't get lost and you always know where you are. So for this next example, and this might seem silly, but what I like to do is cover my hands either with a cloth or a pillowcase or with a book so I can't stare down at my fingers. This just guarantees that I'm not gonna be able to look down. I won't see anything, and it's all about developing that sense of touch. So we're gonna go ahead and give this a try. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take the pillowcase here, cover my hands with it, find my starting keys, and then let's give it a try. So actually that wasn't too bad, was it? And you know, it's a really simple way that you can go about it. I would do it in small passages, of course. Trying to do this for long periods, you know, the pillowcase or towel could fall off your hands, you have to restart. But really use this in those areas where you're really finding it difficult to keep your head up. And this will really help you develop that sense of touch and that sense of feel. So I really encourage you to try this exercise out. The issue with staring down is you get so laser focused on one area that by the time you realize you don't know what's next and you look up, you don't know if you're in measure 1 or measure 50. You just really don't know at that point. Now, in order for this to really work, you have to be comfortable playing the piano without looking down at your hands. So one skill you really need to make sure you develop is relative touch. That way you can touch the keys and move around to positions and actually always be in the right spot without actually having to look down. So let me demonstrate how that works. So a big part of not looking down at the piano is to have that sense of feel, right? That relative touch of knowing exactly where you are, which keys you're touching. So if you're a beginner, what I would start with is trying to find simple positions in the black keys. So the group of 2 black keys is a great example. So I'll just play them like this. 4 groups, we'll just start right down there. And then what you'll do is you'll close your eyes and you'll see if you can just touch. See how accurate you can be. Okay, so I was a little off. I'll try it again. And as you can see, I got it the second time. You can also do this with whatever position your song is in. So the sonatina, for example, right? What I'll do is I'll take my hands off the piano, close my eyes, And I'll try to go up, see if I can feel it. Let's see if I'm correct. And it looks like I was pretty good. So going back to the sonatina again, what we could actually do is feel our positions here, right? We have this position for the right hand, which is just this. And then the other position, which is here. So what I could do is I could feel this position and then shift to this position where I have to play that high G there. And just go back and forth a few times with my eyes open, and then a few times with my eyes closed and see if I can feel it, see how accurate I am. And then what you can do is play the first part, and then go here and see if you're there. And if you are, then play. Same thing for your left hand, it has the C. You can do the same example, just kind of feeling out where you are. Now let's say you're pretty good about feeling where you are on the keys as you start, but maybe you have issues feeling where you are when you have to make moves. Another exercise you can do is just put both hands on C position, scoot them up a second, scoot them up a second, scoot them up a second, and do all this with your eyes open the first time, and the second time do this with your eyes closed and see how you are. Then you can add sound. And just play all 5 keys. Again, you can do this with triads as well, right? You can also do it broken. And however is most convenient for you. So as you can see, relative touch is a really great skill to have, and it's something that you really need to try out. So another tip that I've mentioned in other videos, but I think is really important when it comes to sight reading and improving there, is simply to phantom play one of your hands so you can understand what notes you need before you actually hear a sound. I'll demonstrate that right now. So phantom playing is a really good technique to use not only in practice, but for sight reading. So when we're phantom playing, what we're going to do is make one of our hands silent while the other one plays, or you can just make both hands silent, and then when you're comfortable, then you start playing small passages. So for example, we did the sonatina, right? Maybe the first time I'll just do this. And just feel it, the next part. Then phantom play it. Now what you can do is you can do all of that the first time before you play a single note, and then when you feel comfortable with what fingers you're going to play, then you add your sound to all of that. You can also try phantom playing with basic techniques too, like scales. For example, the C major scale, I can phantom play it like this. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then I add sound. You can also implement triads, the same thing, both hands together. C, E, G, D, F, A, just going up by seconds, etc. And then add sound. So again, when it comes to sight reading, you would need to phantom play in small bits within the passage work. Figure out what's happening, whether you're jumping, you're leaping, if you have to sharp or flat something, and then you play that little bit of the passage, and then you'll be fine. So look, I totally get it. The notes are the most important thing when it comes to sight reading. However, there's another important element too, which is the actual rhythm that you're going to be playing at. Rhythm is often skipped over, it's overlooked, and because of that, that actually causes a lot more issues than you might realize with sight reading. So let's talk about how we can implement rhythms and get them straight before we start playing a piece. I'll demonstrate right now. So when you're first trying to learn how to sight read, it's important that you lock in the rhythm early. If your rhythm is off, playing the notes is just going to be that much tougher. So here's an example that I wrote for this. So you're going to have this measure start with a whole rest, which is 4 beats. You're going to follow that with a couple of eighth notes plus a couple of quarter notes. So the example would be this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Notice when I counted it, I subdivided when the eighth notes came in. But you can also subdivide in the beginning too. So you can say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The reason it's beneficial to subdivide in that open measure with no notes is so that when those eighth notes come, you're ready for that in-between beat to happen. Now, if you just counted the long 1, 2, 3, 4, it may be a little harder for you to suddenly change gears a little bit and have to add in that extra pulse that you're not counting in the first measures. So any point within music you see that you can subdivide it, or if you see that you can look at some of the other rhythms happening later and maybe count those out in other measures, or keep the counting consistent so that when they come you're ready for it, then you'll be fine. Another thing with rhythms, you can simply tap the rhythm first as well. So again, this example again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Or as we discussed, subdivide that first measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then you combine it with all those other steps we talked about, right? You can phantom play it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And then finally, you play it. It's important that you understand and recognize different scale patterns throughout the music. When you have that, it's a lot easier to not only finger your notes, but to anticipate which notes are coming next, what's going to be sharp, what's going to be flat, natural, whatever it may be for that piece of music. So recognizing scale passages and patterns is really important when you're trying to sight read something, because most music is composed of either bits and forms of the triads or the scales themselves, or at least a partial bit of each of those. So for example, this sonatina, right? You can see right there, I'm just playing an inverted triad in C major, right? C major, this is the root position. Inverted it, we went to the second inversion, G, C, E. And all we're doing is just playing them in a broken order, right? Da, 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 da. This next part, we finally have a scale. Now, the scale is based on C major, but the fingering is simply going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the rest of it. So if you know your scale fingerings and scale patterns, then you'll be comfortable pointing those things out. Just like we did in the stage where we were making our marks of what's similar, what's different, what's new, key signatures, different parts. It's all helpful to do it in this way, understanding it, recognizing it before you even play it. So just a general thing that will help you with sight reading is just to practice your scales every day. That way you'll be familiar with these finger passages. You'll know how to attack these notes. You'll know how to move around. You'll know what you're sharpening, what you're flatting. And it just helps make everything a lot easier, especially when you're looking ahead in the music. The other benefit of looking at scale passages throughout your music you're trying to sight read is then rather than just looking at it as like individual notes, you're seeing like the grander landscape of things. You're seeing bigger shapes rather than just like small pockets of notes. And it makes it easier to anticipate what are you doing, right? You can see the intervals, you can see the seconds, you can see the thirds if it's triads. All those things become a lot easier and your fingering will naturally latch onto the keys where you want to go, whether you have editor's notes for fingering or not. You'll just kind of know what to do. And in addition to scales, the key signatures are important as well, because a lot of times when you're playing something, you'll have to know what's sharp and what's not so you can pre-position yourself. For example, if I had something in G major, right? And let's say the song started me on C, I'll know that I need to kind of have that F sharp already ready, even though the song is in G major because of the key signature. That way, when I run into a scale passage, I'll be ready for it. So look, playing the piano is a very exciting activity. And when we have something new, the first thing we want to do is jump right into it, head first, and play it as fast and as accurately as possible. Unfortunately, playing fast right away is usually going to doom your whole chances of sight reading this thing right. So what you want to make sure that you do is to play slowly and play accurately from the very beginning. That is the key to sight reading something correctly. I'll demonstrate what slow and accurate playing should sound like versus the other way. Let's get into that. So one huge issue I see with people trying to sight read, especially beginners, is that they're playing way too fast. They look at the sonatina and they're like, oh, hey, I know this. Let me go ahead and give it a try. And from that point, everything that you're trying to do kind of gets butchered at this point, because you're trying to go way too fast. But remember, the purpose of sight reading is to establish a performance mode, not a practice mode. So it's important that you play things slow enough that you don't have to stop and that you don't have to go backward. So if I'm learning a sonatina for the first time, let's say I've done all my steps, I've phantom played, I've tapped the rhythms and everything. When it finally comes time to play it, I go so slow that I know I can't mess the rhythm up. I know I can't miss notes. And although you're playing at a slow tempo, your hands are actually moving quickly. Here's what I mean. So as you notice, when I said I moved fast with my hands, although my tempo was slow, notice I did this. Da. And look how quickly I shifted up to my G. Now, if I was playing everything fast, I'm trying to read it, it's new to me, I probably, one, would get stuck and maybe not move to the G on time, or I would move to the wrong note because I'm not giving myself enough space to correct it. And really the benefit of sight readings is trying to get things accurate the first time. Once you start having mistakes, it's hard to bake those out once they're baked in. So slow and accurate is the name of the game if you want to get really good at sight reading. So another thing that helps with sight reading, in addition to knowing scales and just key signatures and things like that, is understanding chord patterns. Music is made up of a ton of chord progressions, and if you've seen my recent videos on chord progressions before, then you understand how important it is to know those patterns. Even the oldest of music, from classical periods, follows a certain chord progression or chord pattern that you can start to anticipate and understand and see from afar right away. So I'll show you an example of this in Mozart's Piano Sonata in C major, so you can see how I recognize what the chord progression is and how that can help me sight read and learn that piece of music even faster. So in addition to understanding scale patterns and key signatures, it's really important that you understand chord patterns and chord progressions when it comes to sight reading. If you can anticipate what chord is going to come next depending on what key signature the piece is in and what harmonic works might be happening underneath, you'll be able to anticipate which notes are going to come next, where your hands have to go, and your fingering will also fall in line with that. So let's take this Mozart Piano Sonata in C major for example. If we take a look at the left hand, it is simply doing this. That's a 1 chord, followed by a short 5 chord and a 1 chord after that. Next, we're going to go to a 4 chord, followed by a 1 chord, and a 5 chord, in a different inversion, followed by a 1 chord. So just that quick analysis, as I'm scanning this music and looking ahead in the left hand, I'm seeing that I'm doing this, back to this, to the 4, inversion right, back to the 1, 5, the other inversion of it, back to the 1. So because I know how harmonic passages work, I know how chord patterns work, my left hand is a little bit of an easier read for me. It's just a couple small moves happening. So most of my attention when I'm sight reading and scanning this can go to my right hand now, which has the main melody. So the better you get at chord patterns and chord progressions, the quicker your sight reading is going to go, especially if you have a piece where it has a lot of broken triads like that Mozart Sonata does. You'll be able to anticipate what's going to happen next. And before you even play, you can also do this chord analysis on the sheet. Take your pencil, mark it in there, and fill those positions out. Understand what inversions you're in, mark those as well. Do you have sevenths in the chords? Mark those as well. And it makes it a lot easier for you to kind of just touch and feel where you're going to go and not have to read it so hard and be so stuck in the music. So look, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If so, make sure you leave a like and a comment so I know how it's working for you. I think if you make these changes right now and start applying it to how you sight read, you're gonna see a huge difference, a huge boost, and stop sounding like a beginner and sound more like a pro with your sight reading. And of course, make sure to share this video with somebody so that they get some help too. I wanna make sure this message gets out to everybody. But before you go, make sure you check out these other videos here. I think you're gonna find them super helpful to you.